All right, let's dive into something we all deal with, credit reports.
Yeah.
But we're going deep specifically on TransUnion today.
Okay.
And we're using this really interesting episode of the Credit Talks podcast as our guide.
Sounds good.
And, one thing that really struck me, I think I'm pretty savvy about my credit, but they brought up some stuff I hadn't really thought about, like how even tiny errors, just like typos and stuff,
Yeah.
can really mess things up for people.
It's true. Even small errors can have big impact on your credit score and your ability to get loans or even rent an apartment.
Right. It's not just a number. It's like it affects real life.
Yeah. And the credit bureaus, they rely on accurate information to make those calculations. And when the information is wrong, well, the results can be pretty unfair.
So how do these errors even happen in the first place?
Well, think about it. The credit bureaus, they handle a massive amount of data every day.
Yeah.
From countless sources.
Right.
And sometimes, well, things slip through the cracks.
A simple typo in a social security number can lead to a mixed file where someone else's information gets mixed up with yours.
Oh, wow.
Or outdated information might stick around longer than it should.
Mm.
And then there's identity theft, which is a whole other can of worms.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is.
So, okay, we know errors happen, but what do we do about it? Credit Talks had some pretty specific advice, right?
Absolutely. They lay out a really clear step-by-step dispute process. And the first step, like the most important one, is getting a copy of your credit report.
Okay.
You can get a free one from each of the 3 major credit bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax
Right.
at annualcreditreport.com.
Got it. So you've got your report. Now what? You have to, become a detective or something?
Pretty much, yeah. You really need to go through it carefully, line by line, and look for any inaccuracies, like incorrect accounts, balances that don't match your records, anything that just seems off.
Makes sense. And, I'm guessing documentation is key here. Oh, absolutely. Documentation is your best friend in this process.
Okay, but what kind of documentation? Like, what do we actually need?
Well, anything that supports your claim.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're disputing an incorrect account balance,
Right.
having bank statements or payment receipts that show the correct amount is really important.
So it's about, building a case, like a lawyer would.
Exactly. You want to present a clear and compelling case to TransUnion so they can see that you're right.
Gotcha. So we've gathered our evidence now. How do we actually file the dispute? Credit Talks mentioned a few options, right?
Yeah, there are a few ways to go about it.
Okay.
You can file online through TransUnion's Dispute Center.
Okay.
You can mail in a detailed letter with all your supporting evidence,
All right.
or you can even call them.
Oh, okay. So multiple options, but which one's best?
Well, online is usually the quickest and easiest.
Right. Makes sense.
But regardless of how you choose to file, it's always a good idea to follow up with a written record.
Okay, that's a good tip.
Just so you have everything documented.
So we've filed our dispute.
Yeah.
Now we just sit back and wait for them to fix it.
Well, not exactly. They don't just automatically fix everything.
Oh,
They have to investigate.
of course.
They're legally obligated to investigate all disputes within 30 days.
Okay, so a month. That's not too bad.
Yeah, it gives them time to contact your creditors, review the evidence you've submitted,
Uh-huh.
and then make a determination.
So it's like a waiting game.
It is, yeah.
But hopefully.
But it's a necessary one, They need to make sure they're making the right decision.
Right, I get it.
So that your credit report accurately reflects your financial history.
Okay, so 30 days, they're doing their thing. What exactly are they actually doing during that time?
So they're reaching out to the people who provided the information that you're disputing,
Right.
usually the creditor,
Right.
and they're asking them to double check their records, make sure everything is accurate.
It's like they're playing referee between you and the creditor.
Exactly. They're trying to make sure everyone is on the same page.
Okay, I like that analogy.
And it really highlights how important it is to have that strong case with all your documentation.
Right, because you got to make sure the referee sees your side of the story.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say they finish the investigation, but you don't agree with what they found. What then? Are you just stuck with an inaccurate report?
Well, luckily, no. You actually have some options.
Oh, good.
Credit Talks mentioned that you can escalate the dispute,
Okay.
maybe provide additional evidence or a more detailed explanation of your claim.
Right, so you don't just give up.
Exactly. You keep fighting for what's right.
I like that.
And you can also add a consumer statement to your report,
Okay.
which basically allows you to explain your side of the story.
Interesting. So even if they don't remove the information,
Yeah.
you can at least provide some context.
Exactly. So anyone who looks at your credit report will see your perspective.
That's good to know. Okay, so we've talked a lot about TransUnion, but what about the other credit bureaus?
Right.
I'm assuming it's not a one-and-done kind of thing?
It's not, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
Credit Talks actually had some really good insights on that as well.
Oh, okay, so tell me more. What do they say?
Well, they emphasize that each credit bureau operates independently.
Oh, interesting.
So an error on your TransUnion report
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily mean it will also be on your Experian or Equifax reports.
So you could have different errors on different reports.
Exactly. It's kind of like getting a second opinion from a doctor.
Right. Makes sense.
You want to make sure you're getting the full picture.
So it sounds like we need to check all three.
It's definitely a good idea. It's like getting a financial checkup.
I like that. A financial checkup. That's a good way to think about it.
Yeah. And it can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
For sure. But I have to admit, the thought of going through this whole dispute process with multiple credit bureaus, it's a little daunting.
Oh, I totally get that. It can feel overwhelming.
Yeah.
But Credit Talks actually had some really good tips on how to make it less painful.
Oh, good. I'm all ears. Tell me more. Oh, good. I'm all ears. Tell me more.
Well, the biggest thing is documentation. They really emphasize keeping detailed records of everything.
Okay, so like what kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Everything. Dispute letters, supporting documents, notes from any phone calls you make.
So basically, if it's about the dispute, write it down.
Exactly, because if you need to escalate the dispute later, you'll have all the proof you need.
So it's like building a strong case just like a lawyer would.
Exactly. You want to be prepared.
Okay, noted. What else? What other gems did Credit Talks give us?
They also talked about persistence, like don't be afraid to follow up.
Right.
If you don't hear back from TransUnion within that 30-day time frame, reach out to them.
So don't just assume everything's fine.
Exactly. Stay on top of it. And if you hit a roadblock, remember there are resources out there like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They can help you navigate the process.
Good to know. So it's all about being proactive.
Yeah, you have to be your own advocate.
Okay, so we've talked about disputing inaccuracies, but Credit Talks also brought up something else that kind of worries me.
What's that?
Outdated information. Like how long does that stuff actually stay on your report?
Yeah, that's a good question. Negative information like late payments can legally stay on your report for up to 7 years.
7 years. That seems like forever.
It is a long time, but the good news is the impact of that information lessens over time.
So a late payment from like 5 years ago won't hurt as much as a recent one?
Exactly. But Credit Talks made me realize that even old negative information can still affect how people view your report.
Oh, I see what you mean. It's like a stain that fades but never really disappears.
Perfect analogy, and it shows how important it is to focus on building good credit habits now.
Okay, so even if you messed up in the past, you can still turn things around.
Exactly. Consistent on-time payments, responsible credit card use.
Right.
That's what really matters in the long run.
So it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Exactly. You got it.
You know, one thing that stuck with me from Credit Talks was this idea of addressing every inaccuracy, no matter how small it seems.
Yeah, they talked about that.
Why is it so important to sweat the small stuff?
Well, it's easy to ignore those tiny errors, but they can add up.
Right.
And create a distorted picture of your creditworthiness.
So like one small error might not matter much,
Yeah.
but a bunch of them together could really hurt you.
Exactly. It's like a mosaic. Each individual tile might seem insignificant on its own,
Okay.
but together they create the whole picture.
So each error, even a tiny one, can affect how people see your creditworthiness.
Precisely. And remember, your credit score is just a number reflecting that perception.
Right.
So even a small drop in your score could have a big impact on things like interest rates on loans.
Oh, wow.
Your ability to get credit cards, even insurance premiums in some cases.
So it's like each error is a tiny crack in your credit foundation.
Yeah, I like that.
And eventually those cracks can weaken the whole thing.
Exactly. And it's much easier to fix those cracks early on.
Right, before they cause serious damage.
Makes sense.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's better to be proactive and fix those errors as soon as you see them.
Absolutely.
Credit Talks also touched on something that I've been thinking about a lot lately.
Oh, yeah.
The fairness of the credit reporting system.
Right. That's a big one.
Yeah. And is it really fair? The podcast made me think,
It's a complex issue for sure. It probably deserves its own deep dive.
yeah, maybe we'll do that someday.
But the podcast raised some good questions, like how can we be sure the information being collected and reported is actually accurate?
Right.
And are there any biases built into the system?
Yeah, and if so, how do they affect different people?
Important questions to consider.
Definitely. It's a big conversation, but maybe we should bring it back to the practical stuff for now.
Sure.
Before we get too philosophical.
Sounds good.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, learned how to spot errors on our credit reports, how to dispute them, how to basically take control.
Yeah, it's empowering. Right.
It is. It's like
Yeah.
you don't have to just sit there and take it.
Exactly. Credit talks really hit on that. Like you can actually shape your credit story.
You're not just at the mercy of the system.
Right. And it's not just about individual action either. It's about pushing for a fairer system overall.
Yeah, that resonated with me too. It's like, yeah, we can fix our own reports, but what about the system itself?
Right. Are there ways to make it better for everyone?
Exactly. And knowledge is power, right? Now we know what to do, how to check our reports, how to fight for accuracy.
That's huge.
It is. But beyond the how-to, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that our credit reports, they're more than just numbers.
It's your financial story.
Exactly. And it deserves to be told truthfully.
Absolutely.
And fairly.
And credit talks got me thinking about something else.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Like, what if we could use different data to paint a more complete picture?
What do you mean?
Like, what if instead of just looking at loans and credit cards,
Yeah.
we also considered things like paying rent on time or utility bills?
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about debt. It's about responsible financial behavior overall.
Exactly. And it could make the system more inclusive, too.
I like that.
Because not everyone has traditional credit.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
It's about recognizing different ways of being financially responsible.
And rewarding those behaviors, not just punishing the negative stuff.
Exactly. It's a different way of thinking about credit.
It's like flipping the script.
Right. Instead of focusing on what you did wrong,
Yeah.
it's about what you're doing right.
It's a whole new perspective. And that's what I hope everyone takes away from this deep dive.
Me too. Don't just accept the system as it is. Question it. Look for ways to improve it.
Advocate for a system that works for everyone.
And remember, you have the power to shape your own credit story.
That's a great note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And remember, knowledge is power. So keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep fighting for a fair credit system for everyone.
If this podcast helped you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us keep making these videos. Thanks for watching.